Hi, I'm Nicole Ferraro, and this is The Divide, a podcast from Light Reading exploring the ongoing digital divide, why and where it still exists, and what needs to be done to get people everywhere connected to reliable, high-speed internet. Today, I'm joined by Brian Hurley, Senior Vice President of Legal and Regulatory Affairs at ACA Connects. ACA Connects is hosting its annual summit in Washington, D.C. this week. We discuss the main themes of this year's summit, including what policy changes ACA members want to see for the $42 billion BEAD program. We also get into opportunities for permitting reform under the new Congress, the future of the Universal Service Fund, and more. All right. Brian, welcome back to the podcast. So nice to see you. How's it going?
It's going well. Great to see you as well, Nicole. It's great to be back.
Yeah, I'm really happy to talk with you today. We're going to get into a lot of subjects, but first, I just wanted you to take a moment to reintroduce yourself, your role at ACA Connects, and remind our listeners who may be unfamiliar who your members are.
Sure. So I'm Brian Hurley. I'm Senior Vice President of Legal and Regulatory Affairs here at ACA Connects. So I lead up our advocacy shop here. So ACA Connects, we're a trade association. We represent about 500 small and mid-sized broadband providers. Our members are in all 50 states, the territories. We have sort of a handful or so of medium-sized providers with, hundreds of thousands of subscribers. But most of our members, we're talking tens of thousands of subscribers or even, hundreds of subscribers. So these are small, nimble, entrepreneurial companies, a lot of them sort of mom and pop family businesses that are out there trying to connect rural areas and unserved areas across the country.
Excellent. Okay, great. And so next week, well, actually the week that this episode runs, so technically this week, you guys are hosting your annual conference, the ACA Summit in Washington, D.C. So tell us a bit about who's gathering this week and what the focus of this year's conference is going to be.
Sure. So we're really excited to head into our summit, which I guess will be tomorrow. This is our big annual event here in Washington, D.C. It's our opportunity each year for our members to connect with policymakers, and other, influential figures and thought leaders here in Washington, D.C. We're really excited this year. Attendance is really good. We have a few hundred folks coming to town. Members from all over the country. We have, on Wednesday, we'll have a day of programming here in DC where we'll hear from some of the top policymakers and other figures here in town in our space. We have Richard Hudson coming, who's recently assumed the role of the chair of the House Subcommittee on Communications. We have Commissioner Nathan Symington from the FCC will be joining us. I'll be teaming up with our chairwoman of our board, Patty Boyers, to interview him on Wednesday. So I'm really looking forward to that. We have Blair Levin coming to give his thoughts on what's happening and help us kind of decipher everything that's going on in Washington at the moment. We'll have a panel featuring some of our top CEOs, kind of, sort of from the C-suite, what's the view look like, and what are the big challenges and opportunities that our members are looking at. So really exciting lineup of speakers and sessions. And then on Thursday, we're going to take our message to the Hill and to the FCC. It's our opportunity for our members to go in and meet with the policymakers and share kind of what their big priorities are. For this year. And if I had to sum up our message in two words, it's let's build. So, we want to use this opportunity to, encourage Congress and the FCC, other policymakers to, adopt policies that help our members, unleash the power of a more connected nation and bridge the digital divide. And that includes policies to speed up broadband deployments, provide long-term certainty in the investments that they're making in those networks, and also to just make sure that we have a level playing field for smaller operators. Just that our members, they're an important part of the solution. They're out there serving areas where we often find that the larger providers are unwilling to go. So we need to make sure that they're able to compete on an even footing with their industry counterparts. So I think it's a timely and important message, and we're looking forward to bringing it to DC next week, or I guess it will be this week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a little confusing, but yeah, this week technically. What is time anyway? So let's build. That leads us well into our next subject, which is going to be the BEAD program. I'm sure anyone listening to this knows what that is, but just to offer the background, the BEAD program is the $42.5 billion broadband equity access and deployment program that was passed in the infrastructure law during the Biden administration. So last time you and I spoke was during the Biden administration. We had a conversation about ACA's analysis of state BEAD funding. Obviously, there's now some uncertainty around the BEAD program with regard to a number of things, including what ultimately happens, I think, with the freeze on grants and loans. Moreover, what changes come for BEAD through Congress and the Treasury Department, and whether Elon Musk essentially tries to direct the funding towards satellite services like SpaceX's Starlink. So with all of that in mind, how are you feeling about the BEAD program in general? And what are your conversations with your members sound like right now? How are they navigating this uncertainty?
Yeah, so I think there's optimism within our members that there's some opportunities here to really improve the BEAD program and put it on a sounder footing, and kind of expedite the process and get the money out there. We've been interested in the program since it was enacted in the infrastructure law back in 2021. Our members are already serving in a lot of those rural areas, kind of a lot of the communities that are sort of near adjacent to a lot of the areas that are eligible for BEAD funding. Often our member will have the closest head end to a cluster of BEAD locations. So and our members have experience providing robust high speed broadband service. They're qualified. They've proven track records to delivering service. So they're kind of an ideal fit for what the program is trying to achieve. And $42 billion is just an unprecedented investment. So we've been engaged from early on. As you mentioned, you and I spoke a while back about some of the work we were doing with providing research and analysis to help NTIA in the states kind of size up how much money each state was going to get, and then kind of how far that could go, and the different technologies that could get funded using those allocations. We know a lot of work has been done both in NTIA and the states so far, but we do think there have been some missteps along the way, and just requirements that have sort of been layered on that sort of make the program less attractive for a lot of companies that might have otherwise been kind of ideal candidates to participate. I was talking with one member, and they kind of explained their decision making in kind of a rough, high level way. Sort of like we're looking at kind of like 100-mile radius out from our existing plant is sort of kind of the zone that we're interested in. And as you layer on more and more of this red tape and these requirements and uncertainty, that the radius kind of starts to shrink in terms of where they're going to look. And then that has spillover effects on the willingness of companies to participate at all, and then also competitiveness for bids, instead of having fewer providers competing to serve, and that ultimately will results in you're not getting as cost efficient bids, and it ultimately kind of drives down the effectiveness of the program. So we're really looking forward to opportunities to work with NTIA. I know Ariel Roth has been named as the nominee to step into that role. We have a great relationship. We've worked with her both on the Senate Commerce Committee as a staffer there, and then before that, she was at the FCC working, for Commissioner O'Reilly. I actually worked with her. We were both in the Wireline Competition Bureau at the same time, so we have a long history with her, and she certainly has the experience and the knowledge to kind of step in on day one and do a great job. So it'll be, I think we're all kind of watching to see sort of how this plays out. I think, we have the Commerce Committee, the Secretary of Commerce in place, but we're still waiting on NTIA. So I think we've got some time before all the pieces kind of start to fit together. But I think that the prognosis looks good, that I think we're going to be able to to get some targeted changes that really make the program a little more effective.
I want to hear about some of the changes you'd like to see. Quick question first. A few states had already announced their award winners. Were any of those your members?
I have to go back and check. We may have had a few here and there, but as far as specific changes we'd like to see. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really so BEAD is a connectivity program. That was
Mhm.
the why it was established. That's sort of its purpose, and we'd like to see it sort of reoriented towards making that really fundamentally what this program is designed to achieve. And what that really means is getting rid of some of the what we'd call sort of the red tape, these kind of excess requirements that just they add costs to the to providing service with these funds, and then ultimately then you're less likely, you're just going to get fewer bids. People are not going to be able to be willing to bid as much, and it sort of undermines the program. Things like there's rate regulation that's been gotten a lot of attention over the last year, and the middle class affordability requirements a bit kind of nebulous, and states have done different things with it. There's labor requirements, climates. I mean, there's just a whole litany of I could pull up my list of things where if they just making this really laser focused on connecting households with the broadband at the at the speeds and with the right technologies. That's sort of you want to reorient the program to be really kind of focused on that mission.
Sure. So a saying that got thrown around a lot that may get retired now, given the era we're living in, is that BEAD without equity is bad. And equity comes in a variety of forms. One of those would be affordability. When BEAD was drawn up, it was passed alongside the Affordable Connectivity Program that helped connect 23 million households to affordable broadband. I know you guys were supportive of the ACP and were sounding the alarm pretty early on the need to refund that program. That never happened, as you may know, and the Affordable Connectivity Program is now gone. As we've seen since, that's hurting a lot of households in terms of their ability to afford broadband. And a study just came out the other day about the ACP essentially pays for itself in terms of economic benefits. I can link to that in the show notes. But so where do you guys stand on what the future of affordable broadband looks like? How do you want to see this issue resolved? Because at the moment, states are taking it up, and I know that's not the answer that you guys want, at least. So how do you see this being resolved going forward?
I think you're right. And we were big proponents of the ACP program. We had the vast majority of our members participated, and that includes a lot of smaller cable companies, which just historically a lot of those companies don't participate in FCC universal service programs.
Mm-hmm.
So these are companies that had to basically learn it all from scratch. And I personally was very involved in helping members and kind of try to climb that learning curve of just getting getting used to all the systems, the databases, the national verifier, and all that. And I think they certainly saw the value of the program in their communities and the ability to provide sort of a stable, broadband connectivity, for households that may have, struggled to afford it. I think the future of ACP is tied up with kind of the larger future of universal service in general. And I know that's a really big topic, and there's a lot of uncertainty there. I do think there's a lot of interest in finding a path forward to bring back some sort of a benefit that helps households that are in need obtain broadband service, whether that is considered reviving the ACP or if it's some entirely new program. I think those details are kind of down the road to be sorted out. But I do think that is a more productive approach than sort of just imposing requirements on providers to offer broadband at prescribed rates and speeds, kind of like what we've seen in New York. And we were part of the industry coalition that challenged the law, and we just don't think that's really um, the best approach, the way to achieve that goal. It just undermines incentives to invest, and it's maybe the largest providers they have the scale, the resources, they can sort of absorb those kinds of requirements, but it's really smaller companies, new entrants, that are most likely to feel like, well, I just can't justify extending my network into this community if I can't make a return on the investment that pays off. And it's an unfortunate that sort of you see some states looking at that option. So I do think looking further down the road, trying to find a way to provide support for those households that really need help, I think is where we'd like to go.
Sure. That's difficult for people who can't afford broadband today to wait for the Supreme Court to figure out what it's going to do about the Universal Service Fund, and then for Congress to maybe reform the USF in some way. So probably shorter term solutions are needed for broadband affordability. But since you mentioned the USF, let's turn to that for a second, because it is a really big, complicated topic. As I mentioned, the Supreme Court is going to weigh in on the constitutionality of the USF later on this year, probably in June. I think the arguments are going to be heard in March, right?
That's right.
And then we can probably expect the decision sometime in June. You guys are involved in that litigation? Is that?
We're not directly involved in litigation. No, we do have members who take USF funding and would be impacted if the Supreme Court were to rule against the program.
Right.
So it's certainly something we're paying close attention to. I know everybody's trying to sort of figure out what are the odds of who's going to win and what's going to happen, and there's just if I had a crystal ball, I would gaze upon it and find out.
You wouldn't be sitting here with me talking to me on a screen.
I do think I was struck by the breadth of support that came in from providers, from communities that are affected, from all schools and libraries and low income households, and just the value that the program provides, and just sort of how disruptive it would be if the program were just sort of struck down. So. And I'm optimistic about how things will go, but it's just there's so much uncertainty at the moment that I hesitate to make a prediction. But
fair enough.
We'll all be watching that very closely, though, I'm sure.
Okay, so one other question on that is just if the USF survives, obviously, is your vision for the ACP sort of a combination of ACP Lifeline? Is that what you think would be best? Is combining those into one program?
It's a good question. I don't know if I've thought that far ahead in terms of the mechanics of how they would all fit together. I mean, I do think Lifeline has historically played a little bit of a different role as sort of this mobile, kind of provides basic mobile connectivity. Well, one of the nice things about ACP is that it was designed to be a little more sort of hospitable, like the fixed providers, home broadband providers were able to participate, and kind of and households were able to kind of get both benefits if they wanted. So there's a lot of there's sort of puts and takes of different ways you could design it, or whether you merge the two programs or have two different programs. But those are some of the big questions that are just going to have to be
okay.
Sort of through.
And last question on USF is just: are you guys planning to get into that subject this week or at the conference at all with the commissioners?
I think you may see it come up, especially with companies that are directly impacted. It's certainly part of the swirl of issues that are relevant to our big theme of let's build. I think certainly they're some providers in those areas that really they depend on that funding to sustain their network.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's I think the word sustain is an important one to raise here, because it's not about deployment funds so much. The USF really helps operators sustain their networks,
Right.
particularly in rural environments. So one more, before we move on, I wanted to go back to BEAD just for one quick second on the subject of satellite. Are you guys worried about satellite taking a big chunk of the BEAD pie, or do you feel that your relationships with people in the federal government, you can help persuade them to keep a fiber preference to some degree?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an issue, obviously, that's getting a lot of attention, and I suspect the incoming NTIA will be looking really closely at the technologies and the technology mix
Yeah.
for the program. I think our members are confident that they offer a really, high quality service, and that there's the strong value proposition for using funds to support those kind of robust networks that they provide. And I think the states will also have something to say on what technology mix they favor,
Right.
and we've always sort of acknowledged that there's going to be those extreme, at the far end of the hockey stick curve, those really really high cost
Yeah.
locations where it makes sense um, to look to alternative technologies, like satellite. But I think we're optimistic we'll be able to find a path forward where we still have a good, our members are still able
Yeah.
to participate.
And just for the record, President Trump during the election season had said on a podcast that Elon could do all of this for nothing. Is that true from your perspective?
We certainly have we certainly have our doubts that's really that's really the case. Look, I will say it's unquestionably it's a very impressive technology. It's a very impressive business undertaking, what we've seen with SpaceX and Starlink. I do think the service has its limitations. It has its capacity limitations and the like. And I think it's really, I think it's sort of an all of the above kind of approach to technologies, what we really are going to need to actually get this job done.
Yeah, makes total sense to me. Okay. So I wanted to just turn to other policy stuff that you guys are going to be talking about at the conference, and just what's in your priority bin for this year. So what else are you guys pushing for policy wise under the new Congress and administration? Where do you see opportunities to benefit both the broadband industry and consumers? And what are your ongoing concerns policy wise?
Sure, and I'll just mention a quick one that I think there's a common sense reform. Hopefully, we'll be able to see, which is there's bipartisan legislation to exempt broadband grant funding from taxation, and I hope we can
Yeah.
get that across the finish line. I think it just makes sense to do it, and I know there's
Right, because right now the BEAD
right,
grants are subject to being taxed. So it's giving federal money out and then taking it back
exactly.
essentially. Okay. And that's been something you guys have been flagging for a while as well.
Yeah,
So
and there's a lot of us that have been trying to push that, and I know there's a bill that's just was introduced, and so hopefully we can see that move. We've touched on a lot of areas. I will maybe flag permitting reform is another
yeah,
area where we hope we could see some progress, both when that comes in terms of both federal permitting, sort of streamlining and harmonizing the processes that all the different federal land management and land owning agencies use, and then also just kind of for state local permitting as well. There is a bill that was working its way through the committee last Congress, the American Broadband Deployment Act, which was Representative Buddy Carter had sponsored that. We still think that's a pretty good foundation for the kinds of reforms that would help. That includes things like shot clocks and fee limits on, just to kind of put some sort of guardrails around the process so that permitting gets done in a timely fashion, and it's so that it's not a bottleneck that holds up getting projects built. So that's certainly going to be one of the main sort of areas that we'll focus on this week, and when we
yeah.
take our message to the Hill.
On permitting, are you guys having more success dealing with permitting issues on a state level, or do you think it's just best to address it federally?
I think we're willing to work anywhere, at all, to press every lever we can to try to make some progress. I think at the federal level, we're just, a lot of work has already been done, and so we're kind of building on that, both the bill that I mentioned, and then even at the FCC, there was it was actually then Commissioner Carr
Mm-hmm.
working with Chairman Pai. Carr was actually the lead of this effort back in 18, maybe 17, to adopt permitting reforms for small cell deployments, and a lot of the same ideas from that effort are sort of baked into this Buddy Carter American Broadband Deployment Act legislation that I discussed. So
Okay, great. So you feel optimistic about that
I think
legislation
so.
moving forward?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Anything else you want to mention about the conference or otherwise that I didn't get to ask you about?
No, I think we've covered it. I mean, we're really excited. We think this is a good timing for us to have this conference and go into the Hill. There's, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty out there and sort of disruption and in the environment. But I think we have a strong message that we're taking in, and it's one that kind of endures, come what may with all the different activity that's going on. So I think we're looking forward to having a productive week.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's great that you gather everyone and pack all the programming into one day and then get everyone all hopped up on messaging to go to the Hill. I think that's a smart way to do it.
Exactly. You got to have the pep rally the day before, get people pumped up, and then let them loose on the Hill. So
that's right. And you don't keep them in town for too long. Then you let them get back to their lives. It's a
they're
very sharp conference.
They got their whole weekend. They can go do it as they want. So
I'm into it. Well, thank you so much, Brian. Good luck at the show. Good luck with BEAD. Good luck with Let's Build. And I hope we'll get to chat again soon.
Thank you. Absolutely. Great talking with you. Thank you.
Thank you again, Brian, for joining me. Thank you as well to Pierre Landriau for editing this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the Light Reading Podcast for more episodes of The Divide, as well as interviews and insights from the Light Reading team. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.